Right, well, welcome to the Irrigators Share Consultative Committee Town Hall event. Using the latest of technologies to communicate with people so people can have their say in the times that we now live. I'm Paul Weller, I'm the chair of the Irrigators Share Consultative Committee, which was appointed last June. And between June and now, we've had about 7 meetings to come to our recommendation to get feedback from the irrigators to see whether they agree, whether they want to fine tune, or what they want to do with the recommendations that we have put out there for consultation. I'm the chair of the committee. Other members of the committee are Peter Haken from Central Goulburn, Craig Reynolds from Shepparton, Georgie Sims from Rochester,
Correct.
John Nelson
is
from
now
Loddon
exiting.
Valley, Anne Hodge from Turrumbry, Richard Anderson as the VFF Water Committee Chair, and Natalie Akers as the VFF Water Policy Advisor. We've had some support. We've had a good support from a panel that works with us from Goulburn Murray Water and from the department. And we also have Graham Turner, who's an independent expert in these areas, advising us. From Goulburn Murray Water, we had Graham Hannon, Executive Representative. We had Mark Bailey, the Resource Manager. We had Trudy Woodward, Connections Project. And from Dwelp, we had Michael Jens, who is here tonight. He's the Director of Rural Water Policy. We had the Director of Water Resources Operation Policy, Nicole King. Director of Water Resources Reforms and Insights, Alita Donald. Team Manager, Rural Water Policy, Leonie Duncan. Team Manager, Retail Water Entitlements and Markets, Joe Banks. And the Executive Officer and Committee Secretariat is Tony Radcliffe. And Tony will now run us through the presentation for tonight. And I think she'll indicate that after the presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. Over to Tony.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everybody, and welcome for joining us to our very first virtual town hall. Hopefully we're all managing the technology better than I am at the moment, forgetting to unmute. So Paul's right, I'll be running through a presentation tonight, some slides that the committee's put together, speaking on behalf of the committee, and afterwards we will answer some questions from the audience. Now, if you look at your screens, you will have a little icon that's 2 speech bubbles with a question mark. If you click on that, that will open an area where you can type in your questions so that we can see them and respond to them at the end of the meeting. So please, as I talk tonight, ask questions as you think of them, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll revise those questions and give you the answers. If there are questions that aren't related strictly to the committee's proposal, we can take those and get back to you for the right people. If there are questions that are a little more detailed, we'll go away and we'll provide those answers and repost them up on the Engage Victoria web portal and project page. A little bit of background about me before I get into the slides. So as Paul said, I'm Tony Radcliffe. I'm the Executive and Secretariat of the Irrigators Share Consultative Committee, and I'm also a Policy Officer with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. However, tonight, very firmly in the committee's hat rather than the department's. So without any further ado, we'll start on the presentation. I'll start with a brief explanation of what the Irrigators Share is all about. Many of you will know that the Connections project has been underway through various name changes from Football Modernisation Project right the way through. to recover
is now joining.
Designed to recover a significant amount of water through modernisation of infrastructure through the Goulburn Murray Irrigation District. The savings from stage 1 of the Connections project were agreed from the very start of the project to be shared equitably between the Melbourne retailers who contributed financially to the project, to the environment as part of environmental water recovery under the Basin Plan, and to the GMID irrigators, those who use the infrastructure and contribute to the infrastructure. So when we talk about the irrigator share, we're talking about that 1/3, that component of the stage 1 water savings that have always been committed to being returned to the irrigators. So what we're talking about is up to 75 gigalitres of water, long-term annual average yield. So that's averaging out over the years to 75 gigalitres every year. Irrigator share will be a mix of high reliability water shares and low reliability water shares, reflecting the fixed and variable losses that have been recovered through the project. And due to the areas where works have been undertaken, the irrigator share will be a mix of entitlements from 3 trading zones, Murray 6, Murray 7 and Goulburn 1A. This is a significant asset. Under current water market prices, the value of the irrigator share is over $300 million. So when the committee is making considerations about how this water should be distributed, we've had to consider the value of this asset and the requirements involved in managing an asset of this value. We can't yet tell you the exact makeup of the irrigator share. That can't be confirmed until all the works are completed and the water savings have been confirmed through audit processes. What we do know is that the irrigators, the retailers and the environment all get an equitable mix, all get a mix of high reliability and low reliability so that there's equity between all 3 parties and everybody's treated the same. So that's the irrigator share. The Irrigator Share Consultative Committee, as Paul said, was appointed by the Minister for Water last year and is made up of irrigators from the GMID with access to technical experts. We wanted to make sure that irrigators were the ones deciding what could be and understanding what could and couldn't be done and making decisions about what to propose and recommend to the Minister. The committee was formed and made responsible to look at mechanisms to distribute the irrigator share and to recommend a distribution mechanism to the Minister. The committee was also responsible for providing advice on the best way to engage with the irrigation community. Now, originally that proposal looked a lot different to me standing in my lounge room talking to you through a webcam. But COVID-19 has happened and the committee's been really actively thinking about how we can still reach people and let you have your say and make sure we're getting your perspectives and your feedback on the committee's proposal to help shape this recommendation to the Minister. So again, I thank you for embracing this new technology and joining us tonight.
2 participants are now joining.
So what is the Irrigator Share Consultative Committee talking about tonight? What's this all about? The committee is seeking feedback on its initial proposal for distributing the irrigator share. The proposal you've seen, the fact sheet that's on the website, the information that's out there, this is not the recommendation to the Minister. This is a proposal to test with the community, to get your feedback, to hear from delivery shareholders in the GMID, and to use that feedback then for the committee to review and refine its proposal into a recommendation that then gets made to the Minister. That recommendation is due in the middle of this year, and the Minister then has the final decision in how the irrigator share will be distributed. So we really need your perspectives and your feedback to help the committee shape that recommendation to go to the Minister. Feedback is open from the 20th of April through to the 1st of June. And the committee will then be formulating its recommendation, and we'll share that recommendation back out through the Engagement Victoria portal, and we'll also share a copy of the feedback that we've received through this process so you know what the committee heard and what the community's views were. So enough about the background. Let's talk
is now exiting.
What is the ISCC's proposal. The committee has put forward a proposal of a once-off distribution to all holders of delivery share in the Goulburn-Murray irrigation gravity areas. This distribution is to be provided to individuals based on the amount of delivery share that they hold. Delivery share is the basis for charging infrastructure access fees, which is how irrigators pay to maintain the infrastructure and operation of the GMID. So by distributing the benefits on the basis of delivery share, those who pay for the system receive the benefit proportional to the contribution they make. However, the committee found that below a certain minimum amount of delivery share, the amount of water that could be issued was quite small, difficult to record in the water register, and expensive to maintain. So the committee is proposing a threshold level of delivery share of 0.25 megalitres per day. The proposal is that those at or above that 0.25 megalitre threshold receive a one-off issue of water shares. That's that mix of high reliability and low reliability products. For those below the threshold, the committee is proposing that they receive a financial benefit equivalent to the value of the water share they would have received. Based on the estimates of water recovery to date, knowing that we can't confirm it until all the project works are complete, the committee anticipates that for each megalitre per day of delivery share, 1 meg per day of delivery share, somebody would receive 4 megalitres of high reliability water share plus 1.8 megalitres of low reliability water share. The numbers may move around a little bit, but we're expecting something in that magnitude. So getting into the details of it and what that means for different people. Somebody who's right on that threshold of 0.25 megalitres per day would receive 1 meg of high reliability water share and about half a meg of low reliability water share. The committee felt that 1 meg was about minimum parcel size that's fair to distribute and maintains that value of the water to the recipient. A person with a much higher delivery share rate, 5.5 megs per day, would get quite a significant amount of water, 22 megs of high, 10 megs of low. That's quite a lot of water going into somebody's ownership. With the financial benefit, somebody who's got a DNS connection, stock and domestic, a really small amount of delivery share of say 0.05 megs per day, would receive the market value of that proportion of water share that would have been sent out. So that's 0.2 megs of high and 0.09 megs of low. Now, market prices vary depending on when it's sold, so they'd be averaged across all of the water share sold in that period, we're thinking, as a fair way of distributing that value. Why did the committee land on that 0.25 meg per day threshold level? As I said, that's equivalent to receiving 1 megalitre of high reliability water share based on the estimated product mix and the amount of delivery share that's on issue across the GMID. 1 meg per day, 1 megalitre of high reliability water share is thought by the irrigators on the committee to be the minimum amount of water, the minimum volume that an irrigator can meaningfully use or trade without the costs involved in storage or transfer and trade, eroding the value of that water. If you get into smaller water parcels, then the value of the water is significantly reduced by the costs involved in managing that water and paying the fees attached to it. For those below the threshold, the financial benefits we're proposing would be generated by selling that quantum of water shares that would have been distributed to the people below the threshold. And we're proposing that those financial benefits are delivered on as a credit on a GMW bill. So it's a very simple way of getting that financial benefit directly to irrigators out to you. So this slide's a little complex, so we'll talk through it slowly. But this is essentially what this means to you as somebody holding delivery share in the GMID. So the pie graph there shows the amount of delivery share within different customer categories. So we have 35% of delivery shareholders in the GMID hold delivery share between 0 and 0.05. It's a very small amount of delivery share, and based on our understanding of the water recovered, those people would receive a bundle of water share that is actually too small to record in the Victorian Water Register. So we could not physically issue water to people in that category. The next category down is people who have more than 0.05, but below the 0.25 delivery share threshold. And these are people we're also suggesting receive a financial benefit, as they'd receive less than 1 megalitre of high reliability water share through the distribution. The next category is those that are between 0.25 and 1 megalitres per day of delivery share. So they're the category that would receive at least 1 megalitre, up to 4 megalitres for that 1 meg per day of delivery share. So that comes back to that rate that for each megalitre of delivery share, receiving 4 megalitres of high reliability water share and 0.5 megalitres of low. And the last group up on the top left of the screen are the people who hold more than 1 meg per day of delivery share, who would receive a much larger parcel. So what this tells us is that 49%, or roughly half, of the people holding delivery share in the GMID fall into the category where we're proposing a financial benefit, as they hold less than 0.25 megs per day of delivery share. The other half of all irrigators in the GMID would be receiving water share. The interesting thing is that 51% of irrigators with delivery share above that threshold hold 98% of the delivery share across the GMID. So we're proposing that water shares are issued against 98% of delivery share, financial benefits are issued against 2% of delivery share. However, it's 50-50 for the amount of people who would receive it, 50% receiving a financial benefit, 50% receiving a water benefit. So that's a high-level summary of the proposal, and I'm sure we'll dig into it more with your questions at the end of the presentation. I want to talk a little bit now about how the committee reached this point and the process that the committee worked through to get here. The committee went in without any preferred model, genuine attempt to understand all the possible delivery options and work through them and explore them as far as we could. We considered a base case of issuing water shares to everybody, regardless of how much delivery share they held. And we also looked at options with ongoing distribution of water share, ongoing financial distribution, providing financial benefits to everyone. And we looked at combinations such as providing a once-off benefit to people below the threshold, an ongoing benefit above, and the combination that we've put forward as the proposal, which is water share above the threshold and financial benefit below. Each of these options was really worked through by the committee with the experts they had access to and assessed against the core principles that informed all decisions that were made by the committee. There was a lot of analysis done, detailed papers, lots of number crunching. As I said, it's a $300 million asset, so we really needed to dig in and understand the costs and the governance requirements around all the different models. And the benefits and the impacts of the various approaches were quite extensively debated inside the committee and really tested and pulled apart to understand how things worked and the different perspectives of how the benefits would be experienced by you, the irrigators. So there are those 4 principles that informed the committee's decision making. These were agreed by the committee in its inaugural meeting, and they are the principles that inform all the decisions about what models are considered and how this proposal was shaped up. So principle 1 is that the approach will maintain the integrity of existing water entitlements. Committee was very recognised the importance that existing entitlements must be protected that water rights are critical and that that the distribution needed to align with that and maintain and protect the water rights that irrigators already have. Second principle, around being cost effective, and that's both the initial cost and the long run cost for administration and for users. And committee also wanted to make sure that there was no increase in red tape, that we weren't making it harder for you to use your water. Principle 3, that the approach taken support the long-term collective future of the GMID. We're wanting to support the GMID as a whole to make sure that it's here and functional for irrigators for the long term. Principle 4 is balancing fairness and efficiency with emphasis on simplicity. We don't want to make this complex. It needs to be simple to understand, feasible to implement, and simple enough to keep operating as time goes by. So those are the core principles that every possible option was assessed against and weighed up against as the committee worked through. So I'll run through now about how this proposal we're presenting to you shapes up against those principles and the conclusions the committee reached. So maintaining the integrity of existing water entitlements, that was principle 1. The proposal aligns with all the current trading rules. It protects existing water rights and it maintains the stability of those existing frameworks. It uses the same principles of water ownership and water trade and transfer as all your existing entitlements. It allows you to manage this water same as you would any other water as part of your water portfolio. It's a distribution model that's allowable under Commonwealth regulations. We found that Commonwealth regulations prohibit restricting water trade, limiting trade to specific classes of persons or on the basis of delivery rights. That meant that under the Commonwealth laws, the committee couldn't set up a model that just restricted the use of that water and the trade of that water on the basis of delivery share. But issuing the water shares on the basis of delivery share is allowable under that Commonwealth framework. So this approach aligns with all the existing laws and regulations at a state level and at a national level across the Southern Connected Basin. It follows exactly the same water trade and ownership rules that you currently are familiar with and working with. Principle 2 is looking at cost effectiveness. The good thing about a once-off distribution is it has once-off limited fixed costs. As part of the end of the connections project, the costs of this implementation can be met by government. There's no ongoing requirements. There's no governance arrangements needed. Once the water shares are issued, they're yours to use as you please. There are no extra costs involved with using that water. It's exactly the same as the rest of your portfolio. The committee looked very, very closely at ongoing distributions, where the water could be held and then distributed out as seasonal allocation. And the committee found that those ongoing distributions had significant ongoing costs. With a $300 million asset, the governance and administration requirements and compliance requirements were significant, and that needed to be funded. The only way to fund those ongoing costs is through the trade either of water shares or of seasonal allocation from the irrigators' share, which means over time the amount of water available for irrigators would reduce, and you'd need some sort of trading strategy and need to manage those market impacts on a long-term basis. Principle 3 is supporting that long-term future of the GMID. Issuing the water shares directly to you as irrigators gives the recipients the options, the possibility to make the right decisions for your business, to hold an asset, to keep that value held by delivery shareholders to use for their crops, for their businesses in the GMID. Committee has acknowledged that recipients may opt to terminate delivery shares. We note that if you are terminating delivery shares, the delivery share termination fees still need to be paid, which is that capped at 10 times the infrastructure access fee. And the committee anticipates a transparent process for how those fees would be used to benefit the GMID as a whole, whether that's identifying opportunities for rationalisation or reconfiguration, or finding efficiencies and driving down costs for remaining irrigators. The committee did look at options for locking watersheds in the GMID, and as I said, the Commonwealth regulations prevent any restrictions on water trade. We do acknowledge that there are broader issues about water moving in and out and trading out of the GMID, but those are challenges of trade at the scale of trade. The irrigator share, that's 75 gigalitres, makes up about 6% of the total average annual water use in the GMID. That remaining 94% is still subject to free trade and free ability to move. So if we're going to meaningfully address the trade of water out of the GMID, it needs to be through processes that look at it across the whole of the market, not just this small parcel. So there are activities going on that address those issues at a scale that's more meaningful. And on to the last principle, 4, balancing fairness and efficiency with that emphasis on simplicity. Distributing the benefits of the irrigator share on the basis of delivery share is as simple and fair as we can get. Those who pay for the infrastructure get the benefit in proportion to the contribution they make. It really recognises that infrastructure access fees, which are paid by everybody in the gravity irrigation areas to socialise the cost, are the means for which people should be rewarded for that contribution. Including that financial benefit under the threshold means that everybody gets their fair share, even those who wouldn't be able to receive water because their delivery share is too small. It avoids the creation of lots of small packages of water, and there's a risk if you create small packages of water that they can't be used and can't be traded, so you'd be having water that's not being productively used. And it also means that the benefits of the irrigator share aren't eroded for individuals unfairly through those management costs. Issuing water shares to you, so you have that property right and that ownership, means that government can't come along and change the way it operates and decide to do something else with that water. It means a central body holding that water couldn't have a change in policy or representation and change how that water is managed. It means those rights sit with you. It's simple, you know it's protected and you know how you're going to use it. And no further management is required. The same rules apply for all your other water shares. It keeps it clean, it keeps it simple, it keeps it straightforward. So that's how the proposal was developed and why the committee is confident that it's ready to test this proposal with the community and hear what you think. See if you agree with us that we've judged it fairly on the principles, understand if there's something we haven't acknowledged or something that we haven't considered that could help us help inform the committee and shape that recommendation further. I'll run through now about some of the options the committee looked at, just to give you a bit of background about the other things that were considered and debated in those committee meetings. So the committee looked really closely at ongoing allocation models, the concept being that the water shares are held centrally and allocation distributed every year on the basis of delivery share. So as we've already covered off, the Commonwealth water trading rules prohibit this. We can't trade, even distribute allocation on the basis of delivery rights. So we'd be setting up a system that's not legally compliant, which creates a bit of trouble in trying to administer it and maintain the stability of the entitlement framework. Ongoing administration was really quite complex. The committee sought some expertise on the governance and administrative requirements for an asset of that $300 million value. And it's really quite complex. We looked at the costs of implementing that model, even though it's not compliant with Commonwealth regulations, and the cheapest governance model we could do came out by increasing costs to irrigators by at least $30 per megalitre above the cost of standard water shares. And those costs cannot be locked in. They will vary as the governance requirements adapt to the market. Ongoing allocations were less secure, as the organisation holding those water shares could change the arrangements, could change the distribution process. And it reduces the power for you guys as the recipients to make decisions that suit your business need. You couldn't have that property right to then decide if you were going to invest or make other choices in how your water is used. The committee did find one way of increasing allocations that was compliant with the Commonwealth regulations, and that was using the irrigator share to top up the entitlement pool for all entitlement holders. So that does allow an annual increase in entitlement. It doesn't restrict that to delivery shareholders only. That would mean that that increase in allocation would also go to the environment, it would go to non-water users, and it would go to people outside of the GMID who hold entitlements in the Goulburn and Murray systems. And the committee looked at those financial benefit models. The idea being that the water shares could be sold, or the water held centrally in the allocation traded, and the proceeds of that used to provide a direct financial benefit to irrigators through bill credits, or used to invest in future modernisation of the GMID to keep delivering those benefits through the infrastructure. And the committee was very strongly of the opinion that what matters to you as irrigators is water, and that it was more important that water be given out unless the costs of having water eroded those benefits away. Hence, we landed at the threshold. So here's a question I know is on everybody's mind, which is when will the irrigator share be distributed? The committee is only charged with providing a recommendation to the minister on how it should be distributed. The decision on when still sits with the minister. Committee is calling very strongly for that water to be made available as soon as it is possible to do so. But what the committee does understand is that those on-ground works for the Connections project need to be completed, and the water recovered needs to be verified and confirmed that it's there and can be issued before water shares can be distributed. Committee also understands that we need to make sure that there are no third-party impacts through issuing the new water shares. So that means that the system is operating well, and at the moment the irrigator share is being held in what's called an offset account to manage the operation of the system while works are underway. And that protects the integrity of existing entitlements. If that water was not there, then the existing entitlements might not be secure while works are still underway. So the irrigator share will be can't be distributed until those third-party impacts that protect your existing entitlements are controlled. We know the minister is seeking advice on how soon the water shares can be issued without having third-party impacts, and pushing for that to be as soon as possible. And we do understand that providing financial benefits would be later than the issuing of water shares. So there'd need to be an interim period where the water shares are sold and those financial benefits then distributed out in the next billing cycle as a bill credit, as you need to actually generate the credit before it can be distributed, which means the water shares need to come first. So those are the big questions. And now we're on to what happens next. As I said at the start, this is not the committee's recommendation. This is a proposal. This is what we're presenting to you as irrigators to hear your perspectives and your opinions so that the committee can then shape up that recommendation to go to the minister. To really make sure that GMI irrigators are involved and we understand what you want and how you feel about this proposal, we need you to come in and to complete our feedback forms and submit to us, make a submission to the committee on this consultation. So how do you do that? If you go to our web portal on Engage Victoria, you can complete the survey digitally there. You can also download it as a Word document and complete it offline and email it back to us. I've got the email address coming on the next slide, but it's also on that web portal. So if you're struggling with completing it on a screen or typing, you can do it offline. If you'd prefer a pen and paper, print it out, fill it out with a pen, take a photo on your phone and email it in that way. Any way you can get it to us, we're happy to. If you want more information, there's question and answers and a fact sheet up on the website. You can also go in and read. And we'll be taking your questions from today and updating that question and answer document online to reflect the real questions that we're getting in and provide detailed responses. You can also contact the chair of your Water Services Committee, as they sit on the Irrigator Share Consultative Committee, and they can walk you through the decision-making process and go through the details of the proposal for you. And if need be, they can help you fill out that feedback form. Remember that submissions close on the 1st of June. So we've still got 4 and a bit weeks to get as many people as possible filling that out. And I'm pleased to say that we've had over 90 completed so far. So it's really exciting to know that people out there are working with us on this novel virtual engagement and giving the technology a go and making sure we're hearing from them. And we really, really appreciate that. While we're talking about Engage Victoria and consultation underway, I would like to take an opportunity to direct you to 2 other consultations that are active at the moment, both by the Department of Environment, Land and Water and Planning in the water space. The first one is on proposed changes to the Goulburn to Murray Intervalley trade rules. And this is where we're talking about the ability to have big impacts on how water moves in and out of the GMID. They're consulting now, they're running live events like this, and their submissions are open until the 15th of May. So please do duck in and have a look at what's going on there. And the Water Market Transparency Project is coming back to look at more detailed questions about what information irrigators are happy sharing in a more transparent water market. They have an active page as well. Their submissions close on the 30th of June. Now, both of these links are up on our Engage Victoria site as well. So if you scroll in, you'll find those and you can go across and have your say and learn more about these projects. They're also very keen to hear from irrigators and facing the same challenges we are with COVID-19 restrictions and the brave new world of technology. So thank you very much for your time. I can see we've had quite a few questions come in, which is excellent. I've just popped our email address up on the screen there. If you have anything you want to follow up with the committee or with the department, or if you want to send in a hard copy of a completed feedback form, that email address, rural.water@delp.vic.gov.au, will come in to the Rural Water Policy team and we'll share that on to the committee. Thanks again for your willingness to engage in this strange virtual space. Welcome to my lounge room. It's been a pleasure. And we will now have a very quick break and start going through the questions. I'm very pleased to have a panel to help me answer them tonight. So we have Paul Weller, the committee chair, who you heard from at the start of the night. We have Joe Banks from the Water Markets Effectiveness team at DELP, who can answer lots of questions on water market trade and entitlements. And we have Mike Jens from Rural Water Policy and Projects as well. So one moment and we'll come into the questions. I do want to say thank you to people who've told us who you are and where you're from in the questions. It does help us to understand who we're hearing from and where concerns are coming from. So the first question I have tonight is from Guy Duncan, I do believe in Torumbury, who asks if there is more than 225 gigs, so the stage 1 savings, if there is more than the 225 gig target saved, is this distributed 3 ways or do the irrigators get the additional savings? And I might throw this one over to Mike Jens to answer, as it's an area of policy.
Hi, Tony. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the question, Guy. At this stage, the 225, all the three beneficiaries receive up to 225. If there's water savings above that, those savings have yet to be determined where they will be allocated to. But I think it's fair to say that the environment and the urbans have they paid for under their bulk entitlements up to the 220. They're 75, so a third of that. So that's still an area that is outstanding for the minister to make a determination on. Thanks, Tony.
You just unmute, I think, Tony.
Apologies for that. Second question comes in from Dudley Bryant, who has asked us about the inclusion of Shepparton in the distribution of the irrigator share, given that Shepparton was not a part of the original Connections project scope. And again, I might pass that one on back to Mike to answer.
Thanks, Tony. Hello, and thanks, Dudley, for the question. It is an area which is the committee thought long and hard about and discussed at length. I think it's worth noting that, yes, Shepparton had projects pre-NVERP and pre-connections. As the project rolled out, however, the project actually went back within the Shepparton area to actually generate further savings to achieve the total savings for the project, so the total 429. On that basis, they were deemed as part of the overall achievement of the project and how they were actually going to generate the final savings. So they it was considered as that they should be part of the overall distribution. Thanks, Tony. Back to you.
Cheers, Mike. We've had another question from Guy Duncan, and Guy's asking how the government is going to fund the financial benefits to those below the 0.25 delivery share threshold. So the committee's proposal is that those water shares would be sold and the value of those water shares then provided out proportional to those small amounts of delivery share. As we said, it's a proposal, not a recommendation. So if there are suggestions around how this could be managed, we'd love to hear them. Question after that from Michael Cicera from Fruit Growers Victoria. And Michael's asking about GMW rates and allocation bank accounts and how people know where to find their delivery share, so they know how many megalitres per day of delivery share they hold and thus how much of the irrigator's share they'll receive. And I'll throw that one over to Joe Banks.
Thanks, Tony. Joe here. So yeah, I'll answer that one largely on behalf of GMW. The best place to find that information is really in your GMW fixed fees bill, which is the first set of charges you receive at the start of the water year, usually in July or August. So that includes your delivery rate for you as a customer of GMW, and that's the basis of your infrastructure access fee. So if you look at that bill, it will itemise your total delivery rate, which will be the basis for the calculation of the distribution. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Joe. And we have an anonymous question asking for some clarification on the sale of water to provide those financial benefits. So questioner is asking if it will be sold across the range of zones and the financial benefits socialised, or if people will receive the financial value of the zone they're in. This has been a subject of debate within the committee of what's the fairest way to do this and what's the most functional way to do this, given that water share prices will vary. The committee is currently still seeking feedback and considering through this some perspectives of either way. So we'd like to hear from the community whether there's a strong sentiment of the ability to socialise that, which would be the most simple, the most straightforward way to do it, potentially fair in that everybody does get the same value, versus distributing it in the share you have, recognising that different trading zones do have different water share values. Mike, did you want to add anything to that one?
Look, thanks. Thanks, Tony. Look, the only thing I would add to it is, yeah, I think when the committee first got together to discuss, how to equitably share, it was really around trying to provide the value about where it sat, so the water shares, to make that simple. Then when you got to the point of where you're distributing the financial benefits, we kind of went back to that equity process as well, noting that water shares do change over time, and therefore subject to, depending on other external factors, whether or not it was just as you pointed out, a simplicity equity point of view where you just pull them up and then allow that to go across the whole lot. It does provide a little bit of simplicity as well in terms of billing and in terms of being able to communicate that back to all those sort of smaller customers as well. I know I might just answer another question while we've got here as well. well, Tony, just to put that in perspective. One of the questions is around how many people are actually affected, and I think you've got it up there at the moment, where we're really talking around about 5,000 customers are sort of under the threshold of 0.25, and the other 5,000 are sort of above that threshold, so about 50% would be getting a monetary benefit. When you're actually putting that across a whole system, it does provide a little bit more of a simple way to actually do that. But once again, if there's some strong views from communities about the community and the irrigation community around, we need to revisit that. That's something we can kind of work through.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I have one more question here is, are delivery shares against delivery share outlets included in the distribution of funds and water shares? So I'm not quite sure how to interpret that. I will say we're looking at a single customer view, so it's how many delivery shares are associated with each customer account, and then that benefit going back to the customer. Joe, would you care to expand?
Yeah, sure. I'll add to that, Tony, but pull me up if I'm off track. So I think really the question there is probably what they're asking is domestic and stock outlets, and will they be accounted to? And your answer still stands that all customers, the delivery rate equivalent to what they have, whether they're a domestic and stock customer or not, will be considered in the distribution. You will find under this proposed model that if someone is only a domestic and stock holder, they will fall in that smaller segment that qualifies for a financial benefit rather than a water dividend.
Thanks, Joe. And yes, sorry, I didn't realise that was domestic and stock. The committee did have a lot of lively discussion and came to really acknowledge that DNS users also pay infrastructure access fees, so they are contributing on the basis of delivery share. So determined it was only fair that they also receive the benefit in the end. Are there any further questions? Now's your chance to type them in and have your say. I think that might be it for us tonight. If anybody does have any final words they'd like to share, I'd like to thank Paul for hosting the event. I'd like to thank Mike and Joe for being on board to answer questions. And I'd like to thank you all for your patience with the technology and, as I said, your willingness to engage. Please send through those feedback forms. We have recorded the session tonight and we will make the video available on our Engage Victoria page, so people can come in and watch it at any time if they weren't able to attend tonight. And we're going to run a second session on the 14th of May, again with a live question and answer session. So those details are available on there as well. So please let your friends know. We're keen to hear from as many people as possible. I think that's it. Thank you very much. I hope some of this rain has found you. We're enjoying it down here in Melbourne. It's been a pleasure, and see you next time, and eventually in person. Good night.
Penny
Is now exiting. Multiple people are now exiting.
James
Is now exiting.
Ken Patterson
Is now exiting.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I've just realised that I've been on mute for about 5 minutes. Look, I just want to quickly run. There's a couple questions that have come late. I think that's probably worth answering. First of all, there's a question from Dudley again about what savings have been made in each districts. All the savings are actually audited and actually put on, are audited through the protocol and actually are put online. So there's actually an audited savings to show where those savings are actually being provided, etc. I think it's worth mentioning the committee talked about where the savings were generated, and deemed that the overall project was required to achieve the whole savings for the benefit of the whole GMID, and as such wasn't actually looking at specific areas where the water was actually being provided. Hence the kind of it being put in across all delivery shares. The second question is from Robert Campbell, which is talking around how is it possible to have water savings on low security. So I think it's really about, there's a couple questions around that, is about how is the savings generated. Once again, we talk around the protocol, but it's really around depending on the seasons, there'll be different types of savings that are provided. In low allocation years, when channels are running low, savings are kind of, more guaranteed, a little bit higher, and that's turned into sort of fixed losses. And there's some variable losses as the system is kind of, a little bit wet and they provide more water. The channels are kind of run at a little bit more capacity. They're usually generated as low reliability water savings. The actual reliability of that is kind of in terms of, is probably might grab on to Joe if you want to just touch base on actually the product itself.
Sorry, Mark, I just missed a tiny bit there. Bear with me.
Yep.
Low reliability product, reliability water shares at the end of it.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so look, I think pull me up if I don't provide the right information here, but yeah, low reliability water shares, as many people probably know, are a low reliability entitlement. They are allocated after high reliability is fully allocated and after reserves are secured for high reliability next year. And their allocations are dependent on inflows into the system, but nonetheless, they are a product that has a commercial value to people. It does yield allocations in wet seasons and it can be used as a carryover product.
Are there any further questions coming in? All right. Thanks again, and thanks for the late flurry of questions. We do appreciate it. They're really thoughtful questions, and it's good to see people interacting with this technology and asking things that are really key to how we make these decisions. So once again, thank you all for joining us. On behalf of the Irrigator Share Consultative Committee and our Chair, Paul Weller, we really appreciate it, and good night.